Cleveland. I'm with Boundary Stone. We're here to provide you with resources so that you can effectively engage with your culture and your world. Today what I'd like to talk to you about a little bit is moral positivism. This underlying philosophy has had a tremendous impact on the way people view the purpose of government and law and these sorts of things. And one of the real proponents, and if we look back in time, was an early 19th century British philosopher by the name of Jeremy Bentham. Bentham challenged the prevailing views of the day, the natural law views of morality, which were Christians agreed with. It said, you know, God has commanded certain moral principles, thou shalt not. So don't steal, don't murder, don't lie to people, don't commit fraud, don't, you know, covet their things, those sorts of things. Honor your father and mother, in other words, submit to appropriate authority. You know, so those are moral principles that we should act on. The law should be based on, because they override legislated laws. Now, so what Bentham did is, no, that's all wrong. Really, what we ought to do is we ought to have laws based upon a hedonistic calculus. That is, what we should do is any law is going to create certain pain, but it's going to also offer certain pleasures. And so what we need to do is just add up the amount of pleasure that it's going to create, subtract out whatever pain it might inflict, and if we get a positive sum, then we ought to do that. Well, that all sounds quite nice and all, but the problem here is, how do you measure pleasure and pain? I mean, things that are measurable, you know, we have some concept of it, like volume. You know, I kind of have an idea of how much a gallon is, or distance. I have an idea of how much a yard is, or a meter for that matter. So, you know, they're measurable in particular ways. Well, how do you measure pleasure and pain? For Bentham, he had a measure. He called it the udel. Now I ask you, how much is a udel? I'm not really sure I know or can tell, you know. I mean, if I have some satisfaction, I'm not sure exactly what to tell. I know when you go to the doctor's office, they might ask you, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is the pain? And you might offer up something, but it's just like a subjective sort of thing. And it might depend on your ability to withstand certain amounts of pain relative to somebody else. So that's very imprecise. So these things are not measurable. Well, nevertheless, what has happened in our law is that, based upon this concept that you know, morality is, you know, almost whatever we should make it, you know, whatever our appetite should be, and so the notion that there's a higher law, that there's an objective moral order that oversees, that overarches man-made laws, ends up being cast to the wind. And so you move towards what is referred to as legal positivism. And what this is the notion that what the rule of law is whatever the legislature should have posited to us. And so the political interactions, political wranglings become the chief way in which laws are determined. And if we apply utilitarianism, Bentham's utilitarianism, then everything's about an attempt to do cost-benefit analysis. Now, this has made its way into economics and through welfare economics, which was launched in the early 20th century by some students of Alfred Marshall. Marshall did some mathematical modeling, and what his students did is they worked upon his models to devise ways of arguing for measuring cost and benefits within the concept of the model. And so all of a sudden, utilitarianism has become part of our culture and part of the way in which laws are determined. And we don't have any concern whether or not we're violating moral absolutes like thou shalt not steal or murder or commit adultery or anything like that. So that's put aside. Now, think about this for a moment. When Bill Clinton was president, he's a perfect example of this. He told us that he could feel our pain. Well, now, I know for sure that when he was in the Oval Office, he felt all sorts of things. But our pain was not one of them. See, the only thing you can do when somebody else is suffering is you can kind of try to put yourself in their shoes and empathize with them, but that's not the same thing. And oftentimes what people want to know is just that you care. I hope this is helpful as you think about your culture and your world. Like I said, I'm Dr. Paul Cleveland, Boundary Stone. Check out our website, check out our resources. We want to help you to engage your world. See you next time.